More awesome throwback schemes have been unveiled, and Ryan Newman is back, but he's only racing the short tracks because, as he says, the next-gen car is not as safe as NASCAR says it is. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Lots to cover in this episode. Throwback schemes, Ryan Newman, safety, Ross Chastain, of course. But first, we have to thank our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Motorbooks, publishers of NASCAR's new, officially licensed history, NASCAR 75 Years. NASCAR 75 Years is written by top motorsport journalists Kelly Crandall, Jimmy Creed, Mike Hembry, and Al Pierce. Not only is it official, but it's beautifully designed, hardcover, with over 300 images from NASCAR's own photo archives. This definitive history covers it all: the drivers, crew chiefs, pit crews, owners, cars, tracks, and champions. NASCAR 75 Years is available now. You can order it on Amazon.com, Walmart.com, BarnesandNoble.com, basically anywhere you get books. I'll put those links down in the description below. Highly recommend whether you're a longtime fan or a new NASCAR fan. Thank you to NASCAR 75 Years for supporting the show. I don't know if you can hear it, but it just started storming outside, so we're about to find out just how thin these walls actually are. We're gonna go a lot of different places in this episode, so let's just start with a clip I saw of Kyle Busch saying he wants the Brickyard 400 back. Clip was from last weekend. It was Bob Pockrass, Fox Sports, asking Kyle if there are anything from like the 90s or the 2000s that he'd want to see back in NASCAR, and without much hesitation, Kyle Busch said the Brickyard 400, which I wholeheartedly agree with Kyle Busch, and the little rumors I keep hearing, everyone keeps hearing behind the scenes, are that Doug Bowles and the whole team at IMS do in fact want to bring the Brickyard 400 back. It obviously won't be this year, but maybe even 2024. We could see NASCAR return to the oval layout. I realize the Brickyard 400 lost almost all of its luster over the years. It went from being a fan favorite to like actively being hated by many NASCAR fans. And there are things I've liked about the Indy road course, namely that they've been able to double up with IndyCar in the same weekend, which I think is cool. But whether it's been the curb tearing up a bunch of race cars in year one or the turn one terror that was year two, I think many in the industry and especially many fans have warmed up to the idea of a potential Brickyard 400 return, especially with this new car that's raced pretty well at most intermediate and traditional ovals. I don't have much else to say other than I second Kyle Busch's comments. I like NASCAR experimenting with more road courses, but the Brickyard 400, like it or not, was a crown jewel, and the drivers especially took it very, very seriously. So we took that away from them. I think it'd be great to give it back to them. Even if we only race the Brickyard 400 like every other year, maybe we do alternate in with the road course occasionally, I'd be fine with that, but I'd like to see the return of the Brickyard 400 next year or as soon as possible. You know, I was digging through some stuff at my parents' house the other day and I found my old Brickyard 400 ticket. I went to the Brickyard 400 back in 2007 and I was excited. I found the actual hard copy ticket. I wish we had more of those across not just NASCAR, but all sports, all things. I miss the old physical, big, graphic tickets. That's, I guess if Bob was to ask me, hey, what's something from NASCAR in the 90s and 2000s you'd like to see back? I'd say tickets. Give me those hard physical tickets again. Actually, you know, I say that, and then I just remembered I got a package from North Wilkesboro Speedway with my tickets to the North Wilkesboro All-Star race. I'm not going to show you, let me show you part of it. I'm not going to show you all the barcode or exactly where I'm sitting, but yeah, I appreciate North Wilkesboro bringing back the old classic large physical ticket. So I guess in a way that has come back, at least for Wilkesboro. Moving on, yesterday, if you missed it, and I'll put the link right here just in case you did, I reviewed every single Cup Series, as well as some Xfinity and Truck Series, throwback schemes that had been revealed. This week is packed for me. Yesterday was the only day I was gonna have a chance to make that video. I knew there'd be other throwbacks being revealed later in the week, but I had to get that video done yesterday. After I uploaded that, Ryan Newman and Rick Ware Racing unveiled their throwback scheme, and it is elite. A throwback to Ryan Newman's first NASCAR Cup Series win. They changed the font, looks beautiful. They got the colors exactly right. I love that they modified the Jacob Company's logo to kind of sort of match the old Mobil 1 design. I mean, honestly, they did a fantastic job, all things considered. This is a cool throwback. Awesome to see Ryan Newman back in NASCAR and the Cup Series. Love seeing this iconic look back on the racetrack, and it means a lot. Ryan Newman's first career win. Another throwback that was unveiled yesterday that deserves a shout out: Blaine Perkins, Our Motorsports, the 02, throwing it back to Kevin Harvick. Payday, the candy bar. That's right, Payday back in NASCAR. They got the actual company to come back and sponsor, perfectly matching the original Harvick scheme. If you're a fan of historical accuracy, you're gonna love this one. Well done, Our Motorsports, Blaine Perkins. I hope they have a great run. I hope they give this iconic paint scheme a heck of a ride this weekend at Darlington. So shout out to them. Again, be sure to check out that video from yesterday if you want to see me talk about the other Cup Series throwback paint schemes, as well as some of my favorite Xfinity and truck ones. But moving on, speaking of Ryan Newman, he spoke to Auto Week earlier this week and had some very choice words when discussing NASCAR's new next-gen car and perhaps its lack of safety. We have to remember that Ryan Newman actually has an engineering degree, and he's been involved in a couple of harrowing crashes in the past that caused NASCAR to add bits and pieces, add bars to the roll cage. So when Ryan Newman says something about safety, I think it's fair that we all listen. I'll link the full article down in the description below, but Ryan Newman told Auto Week that Darlington Raceway this weekend, 1.366 miles long, will be the biggest oval he competes on this year in a Cup car. Newman said, quote, "I don't think the car is as safe as it should be or as safe as they say it is on the big tracks. I don't need to be a crash test dummy. I've already got 2 bars named after me. I don't need a third." According to this article, Newman is only racing at Darlington so that he'll be eligible to compete in the All-Star Open at North Wilkesboro. If that wasn't a requirement, he probably wouldn't be racing this weekend. He's got Bristol, Richmond, and Martinsville for sure on his schedule, 3 of the shortest tracks on the schedule. Newman is wary of driving the next gen at big, high-speed racetracks, and I can't say I blame him. He's 45 years old, so I don't blame him for coming back to NASCAR but being a bit more risk adverse. We've seen a couple drivers, a younger driver and an older driver, impacted by concussions in the past year. This year, thankfully, so far that has not been an issue. NASCAR did edit the rear clips. They did make some changes to parts of the car to try and soften those impacts, but Ryan Newman is still not sold. Hey, Ryan Newman's a smart guy. I don't know how in-depth he's looked at these next-gen cars. I'm not sure what data he has seen or hasn't seen, but I don't blame Ryan Newman for being cautious. It's great to have him back in NASCAR. I know it's a difficult, awkward scenario with Rick Ware Racing, but it is cool to see the Rocket Man back in the Cup Series. We'll see how he does. It'll be Newman's first time racing the next-gen car this weekend. He said, quote, "The biggest adjustment I'll have to make is the fact that the guys are shifting per lap and the shifting mechanism itself. Outside of that, it's a steering wheel and pedals." Newman seems pretty comfortable, seems pretty confident. Good luck to Ryan Newman. Love that throwback scheme. Hope he has some good runs this year and stays out of trouble. Don't want to see a guy who's just kind of coming back for one last shot at glory. You don't want to see that guy get hurt. Now, lastly, we've got to cover Ross Chastain one final time. There was some speculation that Chastain or Gragson might face some sort of penalty for the fight that occurred after Sunday's race. NASCAR's Elton Sawyer, though, was very quick to come out and say, hey, there won't be any penalties. Nothing Ross or Noah did justifies a fine, certainly not a points penalty, and I agree. I think that's the right call. I was a little too hard on Ross, perhaps, in my post-race video this past Sunday. I didn't have a huge issue with him punching Noah Gragson. I mean, Noah Gragson has been quick to throw punches at other drivers in the past. I don't blame Chastain for taking the initiative in this case. The reason I felt like the whole fight was kind of cheap was because Noah didn't get a chance to retaliate. Security guards stepped in immediately and blocked Noah's return fire, so that felt kind of cheap for me. Ross Chastain got to take a punch without facing any repercussions, but I get he doesn't necessarily control what the security guards are going to do in that case. Anyway, one thing that's driven me a bit crazy over the past few weeks about Ross Chastain is how so many in the media especially, many people, not all, are afraid to have an actual opinion on Ross Chastain. If you watch Race Hub more times than not, if you're watching the broadcast on Sunday, if you're watching something on NASCAR's official YouTube channel, typically when they bring up Ross Chastain, they might criticize an incident here or there, but more times than not, they'll chalk things up to, hey, like him or not, Ross Chastain is here to stay. He's good for NASCAR. He gets people talking. And that's not really an opinion. That's at least not a controversial one at all. It's the safest thing you can possibly say. I agree with that opinion, if we can even call it that. Yeah, Ross Chastain, I do believe, is good for NASCAR. He gets a ton of people talking, but that's not controversial. And you're avoiding actually picking a side that might ruffle some feathers. I saw a clip yesterday on YouTube, I think it was NASCAR's official YouTube channel, of Kyle Petty giving his quick take on Ross Chastain, and like him or not, I respect Kyle Petty because more times than not, he gives you a strong opinion. I don't always agree with that strong opinion. I'm sure many of you don't always agree with that strong opinion, but at least he typically comes down one way or the other. In this clip yesterday, however, he kind of did the thing that drives me crazy. For most of the clip, he kind of sat on the fence. He compared Ross Chastain's driving style to Joey Logano, to Dale Earnhardt, to Richard Petty, which I thought actually was interesting. But then he made the same argument that Ross Chastain's team owner, Justin Marks, made last year. Kyle Petty said, quote, "When you have a new guy winning races and challenging the establishment, people are going to complain. He has one purpose, it's to win the race. He didn't come to make friends. He didn't come to bake you a cake. He came to take your trophy and take your money. That's what he does on a fairly consistent basis. He's the new kid on the block, and no one seems to like the new kid on the block." I want to make myself clear. I think Ross Chastain is a very good dude. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's an incredibly talented race car driver, which is why the careless mistakes are all the more frustrating, because we all know he's better than that. When it comes to his on-track, aggressive racing style, sometimes I love it. When he's making a 3-wide move on the restart, makes it stick, gains 2 or 3 spots, that's awesome. That's highlight reel stuff. NASCAR needs more of that. I'm a fan. It's the careless mistakes that I just mentioned. It's the wrecking Brennan Poole up into Kyle Larson in stage 1 for no reason. Just pushing too hard, being a little too aggressive. Those are the mistakes that drive me insane and that I'm not a fan of. Just so y'all understand my perspective, I grew up a Matt Kenseth fan. That's the guy I watched, I cheered for 15-something years. He was known for being one of the cleanest, fairest racers on the racetrack. He had the respect of nearly every driver in the garage. Let's compare that to Ross Chastain, who is not known as a clean racer, who does not have the respect of many drivers in the garage. They are complete and polar opposites. So just so you understand my perspective, I grew up supporting this style. Ross Chastain is the anti that. It's hard for me to come around and warm up to every move Ross Chastain makes on the racetrack. Sometimes, oftentimes, he drives me a bit crazy. And this argument from Kyle Petty, and Justin Marks has made it in the past as well, also drives me a bit crazy. Look, no one hates Ross Chastain because he's the new kid. There have been plenty of new kids that have run up front, not made so many careless mistakes that drivers mostly respect. Drivers dislike Ross Chastain because he makes careless moves. I just mentioned the Brennan Poole deal. Whether it's been Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, his own teammate Daniel Suarez was mad at him. Chase Elliott made some snarky comments about him this past weekend. They're not making those comments, they're not voicing those frustrations because he's new. You're ignoring the many incidents that he's been a part of, some of which clearly his fault, like the Brennan Poole deal. Others, like Talladega a couple weeks ago with him and Noah Gragson, not really Ross Chastain's fault. He was pushing the envelope, sure, but that was more on Gragson. The Richmond deal a couple weeks ago that Bell criticized Chastain for, that was not Ross Chastain's fault at all. Not every issue is Ross Chastain's fault, but to pretend that he's not involved in more incidents than your average driver, I don't agree with that. So no, it's not because Ross Chastain is the new kid. Maybe it's a little bit of that. He is new, but it's the fact that he's running up front and is routinely racing very aggressively, often making moves that put his competitors in very vulnerable situations. That's what I believe happened at Kansas this past weekend between Chastain and Noah Gragson. Did Chastain run Gragson into the wall? Did they ever make contact? No. But Gragson had the position going into turn 3. Chastain intentionally overdrove the corner, drifted up towards Gragson, putting Gragson in a very vulnerable spot where he had to make a split-second decision. Chastain admitted afterwards that, yeah, he crowded him. Gragson gets to the wall, cuts a tire, wrecks. I mean, the incident's not 100% on Ross Chastain, but it was his decision to put Noah Gragson in a very vulnerable spot that ultimately led to Gragson getting into the wall and crashing out. Chastain has to share at least some responsibility for that. And that's the kind of racing that I think many of the front runners are upset by, because you look around and very few other drivers make those same moves, certainly not as frequently or as consistently as Ross does. So to chalk it all up to, oh, he's just the new kid, no. You're choosing to ignore what happens on the racetrack. Now, Kyle Petty, again, gives his opinion. He says he likes Ross Chastain's aggressiveness. He doesn't have an issue with it. So, hey, I appreciate that. He's actually taken a side. So many others I've seen and heard from typically don't take sides. They're very lukewarm. Hey, he's good for the sport, like him or not. No, tell me. Do you like him or do you not like him? I like a lot about Ross Chastain, but I'm not a fan of his driving style, at least not currently. Now, my opinion on Ross can change if his driving style evolves somewhat. If he can keep the aggressiveness, the bold, awesome moves, but remove the careless mistakes, the rubbing up into guys, the punting lapped cars. If he can remove that part of his game, I'll be the biggest Ross Chastain on planet Earth because he is good for NASCAR. He is drawing the headlines. He is unique. He has a distinct style, mentality. But the careless mistakes on track do drive me crazy. I guess I'll just leave it at that. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on Ross Chastain. I got many of your opinions on the fight last week in my earlier video, but now I want to hear just your thoughts on Ross Chastain and his style more broadly. That was one incident. Let's talk about, this whole season, or going back even to last season. How do you feel about Ross Chastain? Not just, oh yeah, he's good for the sport, blah, blah, blah. How do you actually feel about his moves? Do you like them? Do you want him to dial certain things back? Do you want him to dial it all back? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave it a like. If you're new to the channel and you love NASCAR rumors, opinions, news, you're in the right place. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And thank you to my Patreon supporters for your very generous support. The rain eventually died down, thank goodness. I'll be live tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time, right here on this YouTube channel with a bunch of buddies of mine. We'll be talking about many of the stories we just discussed and more live with you all in the chat, the live audience. Looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to Darlington this weekend with the podcast Party Bus. I will see you there.